Growing up, one of my favorite things to do was go to my granny's house. Granny's house held a certain sort of magic for me. I don't know if it was all of the animals or it might have been the fact that Granny kind of let me run wild and dared anybody to say anything to me about it. As I grew older, I realized that I didn't know anything about my granny's life. Don't know anything about her story. I've never asked. So I finally sat down and asked her if she would do an interview with me. Tell me about her life. Tell me about growing up on a farm. I wanted to learn. I wanted to hear things that had to do with my ancestry. Boy, did I get a surprise. I learned that there were so many things about myself that I never knew came from her. So like everything else, I'll share it with you.
And the nannies always have to remind them, if they ever decide that they don't want this Daisy dog no more, they just don't want this Daisy no more, I can always take it. I try to abduct this dog every time I come up here. But look at it. Daisy! Daisy! Oh, look, oh my God, oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it's so pretty. And her loves me. Oh, her loves me. Oh, God, I love this dog. I'm going to have to take you into Nanny's backyard and show you her subdivision. Muddy. But now you guys see why going to Nanny's house was always my favorite thing when I was a kid, because Nanny loves animals as much as I love animals. And so she always had a menagerie of something.
What does that look like?
Is that who I think it is?
Who is that?
Mel Cochran?
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Mel Cochran? Mm-hmm. I knew that.
What year was she born?
That's awesome.
She died in 1977.
I'm gonna buy a photo scanner and scan these on my computer, okay?
My daddy. Yeah, you can if you want to.
This one?
Mm-hmm. No, that's Mama's brother.
Oh,
Delton.
that's Delton?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And Daddy, they're drunk.
I've never seen these before.
Haven't you?
No.
Pictures of our former pastor drunk. Yes. Yes. So who is this?
Okay, that's my papa, and that's my mama. That is my mama. That's Della Mae, her sister.
So this is Granny Widener, Granny Weber, right here.
Yeah, that's Granny
Oh
Weber.
my God.
And where's that baby? That's Della Mae.
Great grandfather, and this is your great grandmother.
Yeah, and this is Mama's. This is my great grandmother on Mama's side. I have an individual picture of her husband. He died at 104. He remarried at 96.
Remarried at 96?
Yeah.
Lord, what a late
Her
start.
name was Sally, and his second wife was named Marty.
You look like her.
Thank you.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's a good thing. I love her.
Okay. Oh, you love her?
I love her.
Well, you look like her.
Thank you.
This is so neat. Now, who are all these?
Just this is my cousins. I
Just
don't
all
know.
cousins and sisters and
I don't
brothers.
know.
And
This is.
look at this cute one with those shoes on.
Mm-hmm. This one don't got shoes on.
Probably half of them didn't have
Mama
shoes.
could tell you all of these, but I don't know them.
Yeah.
All I know is that's my mama. That's Della Mae. This was before the boys were born.
I actually like that name, Della Mae.
I was born May 7th, 1943, a long time ago. I was born in Claiborne County, New Tazewell, on a farm. Lived in the same house until I was 7. Then my mom and dad built their own 2-room house. No running water. Lived there until I was 10. Then we moved to a bigger house because I had 2 sisters added. needed a bigger house.
How many siblings did you have?
I was the oldest of 8. 4 sisters and 3 brothers. My oldest brother was 2 years younger than me. He died at 2 months old. Mama was 19, Daddy was 22. Worked at a sawmill. Then he worked at a tobacco warehouse. It was all for the same man. Just having animals. Had my own horse. And just being free to run and play and do and not be afraid of anything or anybody, and just country living. It was just part of life. Everything was just part of life. You wasn't assigned any chores. You was there, you did whatever was to be done. No questions asked, no denying it, you just do it because it needed to be done. My daddy whipped me 3 times in my whole lifetime. Number 1, he had told me not to crawl underneath the house and get the pups. I did it anyway. So he whipped me. And then when I was about 6 or 7, he took me to the dentist because I had a toothache. I wouldn't let him get me out of the car. I kept running from one side of the car to the next. When he took me home, he whipped me for that. Then, when I was 15, me and my sister was fighting. And I didn't know he was home for dinner. And he whipped us both. My mama whipped me 3 times a day, whether I needed it or not.
Just in case.
Just in case I didn't need it.
Do you know how to use a wood cook stove?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's your favorite thing to cook off of wood? What tastes the best that you can't replicate on a regular stove?
Pinto beans.
Pinto beans?
You just cook them slow, and they're just so good. Did you make cornbread in the... Oh, Lord. Someday I'll have another wood stove.
When I get one, you're going to have to show me how to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to burn the house down.
It's simple.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, walk me through, how would you even start it? And, what do you do to it?
You don't do anything. It's just got a little box. It's got a space to put wood. You just get, they call it kindling. It's little pieces of wood. And you just lay your paper, and then you lay your little pieces of wood. Then you light it, and then get that burning, and then you just keep adding wood, and adding wood, and adding wood. And eventually the whole stove will get hot. The oven will get hot. The stovetop will get hot. You just have to watch it and make sure that you take it out when it's done.
Oh. So there's no way of regulating anything, so you just kind of...
Nope. Just cook.
So did you do pressure canning, or did you do water bath canning?
No, there was no such thing as a pressure cooker when I was growing up. You take a pot outside, you set it on rocks, you build a fire under it, you put your cans in it, and you cook them for a certain amount of time. Whatever the vegetable was, you cook that the required amount of time to get it cooked.
A lot of people say you can get botulism if you cook green beans and it's not in a pressure canner.
No, that's why you have to cook them 4 hours instead of 40 minutes.
Oh.
When it rained or snowed, you didn't have to worry about having to stay in the house. You just went out in it and played whatever there was to play with, or whoever there was to play with.
It sounds like heaven.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Everybody says, you lived through hard times. No, you didn't. It was working times. You didn't have to worry about what was going on tomorrow. You knew what was going on tomorrow. You was going to get up at daylight and start your day's work. And you was going to go to bed at night. You had a bath once a week. You had your feet washed every night before you went to bed in a clean bed. Got your feet washed. A bath, you got one every Saturday night.
For church on Sunday.
And just none of all this modern stuff. Our water came from a spring. You set a bucket on a flat rock. My parents put a galvanized pipe back into a little cave-like where the water came out, and anchored it down and put a string wire over the end of the pipe so nothing couldn't come through it. and then just set your bucket down and let it fill up, and then you have another bucket, and you take it out when you want water and switch out the buckets.
That's smart.
And you drink out of a dipper. You didn't have a clean glass every time you wanted to drink water.
And everybody just shared the same dipper.
Exactly. We couldn't start school until we was 7, completely 7. I started out in the primer. Was no kindergarten, no pre-K, just primer. I went 1 year in the primer. I had a 2-room schoolhouse. We had 2 teachers, Hazel Drummonds, Stuart Collingsworth. Hazel Drummonds was a primer, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The big room was Stuart Collingsworth. He was 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. I went to the 1st grade, and I was always a little chicken. And my aunt's 2 years older than me. She was in 3rd grade, so I got to sit behind her in an empty seat. And when I got through with the 1st grade, I went straight to the 3rd grade because I had picked up enough. I didn't have to go into 2nd grade. I picked up enough in the 3rd grade. Then when I was through with that year, I went into the big room, 4th grade. Went in the big room, 4th and 5th, and when we got through with the 5th, the whole school moved to another schoolhouse. Still 2 rooms, still same teachers. We just all moved to a different schoolhouse. When I got finished with the 5th grade, I skipped the 6th grade, went into the 7th grade, then we had E for excellent, S for satisfactory, and U for unsatisfactory. Had my first test, and then it was arithmetic. Now it's Lord knows what. Had my first test, and I made my first U all through school. I didn't go back to school because I had made a U. Didn't go back. So then I waited until the next year, and we had moved to a bigger house, and I started going to, we called it town school. Then I started back in the 7th grade there, finished the 7th grade and the 8th grade in town school. I got my GED.
How old were you?
58. It was just simple, and I always had, okay, to begin with, I had a pony, and this was before we moved to town. I could walk up to him, his name was Billy, and I could say, stretch out Billy, and he would put his front feet forward, his back feet backward. All I had to do was just straddle him and sit down, and then he would stand up and go wherever I wanted him to go. And then we moved to town, and I got a bigger horse. Her name was Bonnie, and we never had to have a bridle, we never had to have a saddle. She would just walk up to the porch, we'd get on, and she would ride us and take us back to where we wanted to go. Just, everything was just simple.
What I wouldn't give for a time machine. Let's just go.
Yeah, me too. What I wouldn't give to go back.
So you like horses, don't you?
Absolutely. I love horses.
We need to go horseback riding, Nanny.
Absolutely.
Would you really? Would you go riding if I took you riding?
I'll go horseback riding any day. Everything was just, people talk about the hard times. There wasn't hard times. You worked hard, you played hard. You didn't have to worry about all this mess that's going on now. Just a hard, easy life.
Yeah. That's why all these people are into homesteading. Everybody's trying to learn. Because, like, Amy was talking about it, and she said, you know, we're a couple of generations removed from that. So the things, like the skills that I would need to go out and do that, I don't have it. And I have no way of learning unless I have somebody like you that's going to be like, let me show you how to work a wood cook stuff. So you're in there catching fire. We're so far removed from it. I don't know how to do half this stuff. I didn't know that you could water bath can green beans for 4 hours and they're fine and safe. I thought that because everybody's like, you'll die of botulism, don't do it. No. And I'm just like, surely to God, people didn't die from eating green beans.
You had a big wash tub, not one of these little things like this. You had a big wash tub. You had it propped up where it was level on rocks. You set your canned stuff down in that, and certain things had certain times to cook. The reason I remember green beans had 4 hours is because that's mostly what you do. And just make sure your water is up over the lid. You cook it for 4 hours. You're done. You take them out, set them down to cool, and you just watch and make sure each one of them seals. And it's done for. They'll keep for 2 or 3 years. We had horses. We always had 2 or 3 horses. We had cows. We had pigs. We had goats. We had chickens. We always had a cat. No inside cat. They would come in at nighttime, go out in the morning time. We always had a dog. It was just simple. And Sunday, we would go out and catch a chicken or 2 chickens, ever how many you wanted to cook. Mama would chop its head off, not wring its neck, chop its head off, let it flop. And then you dip it in boiling water and pluck the feathers out of it. And then cut it up, take the guts out of it, and then just do it like you do chicken from the store now. Every single day. I lived next door to up the hill from my daddy's dad. And I saw my grandparents every day. Until I was 9, I had 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 4 great-grandparents and 4 grandparents until my first great-grandfather died when I was 9 years old. And thereon they just got older. My great-grandmother died when I was 14. She was the full-blooded Blackfoot Indian. She died when I was 14. And my mama's grandfather, my great-grandfather, lived to be 104. He married his second wife when he was 96.
So you'd go back in a heartbeat if you could?
I would in a heartbeat.
Do you ever wish you still lived like that?
Absolutely. But there's anymore, there's no safe. Drinking the water that you just drink, it's not safe.
Yeah.
And we to catch wash water, and my mama washed on a washboard, where you just take a tub and a board and you scrub until you don't have any more skin on your fingers. And they would set a barrel at the corner of the house to catch the rainwater. And it would get mosquito larvae. And people just called it old wiggle tails. That's it. That water's got wiggle tails in it. And all it was mosquito larvae. But they didn't know anything other than the wiggle tails.
So they just left it in there? Who cares? Or do they?
Yeah, it was just wash water. I really wouldn't like the fact of taking a bath once a week. But at least you get your feet washed every day. Couldn't go to bed with dirty feet. 17. Almost 18.
Where'd you work?
At the Jiffy restaurant. It was like a blue circle. I made $13.50 a week. Not a day. Not $13.50 flat a week.
What'd you do? Were you a waitress?
Curb girl. Took orders from the window, had it fixed, and carried it out to the car.
I bet you look so cute in your little dress.
I bet you I did. I was so skinny that people laughed at me for having such long arms and legs. And I just wanted to gain weight. So I kept gaining weight and kept gaining weight and kept gaining weight. After I got grown up and got married and on my own, my kids was the only satisfaction in life that I had. And picture Miles, he's 5. Miles is a little bit older than Monda Lee when I had 5 kids. I had 5 kids in 5 years. 5 years and 4 months, I had my 5th baby, which was that girl right
Which was
there.
me.
Yep.
And I was perfect, and she was done, and then
Surprise.
Along came Angie.
3 years later.
3 years later, along came Angie.
The surprise. And it's the only one with red hair. You should have sold that one on eBay.
I should have. They didn't have no eBay. I wouldn't trade having my kids. I would trade my grown-up lifestyle, not my kids, not my lifestyle when I was a kid growing up. And nothing was wasted. We eat everything. My mama would make a garden, and that's pretty much all we had. And we got took to church from school. The teacher, when they had a funeral, she would take the whole class to the funeral, to church, because it was the school and the church was right there from just a little ways. And when they had a funeral at the church, she'd take the whole class to church, to the funeral.
That's interesting.
And it's just, like I said, just so different. She never married, and when me and my daddy went to the same school, had the same teacher, and when we had our school reunion, not a class reunion, but we had our school reunion, and our teacher was there. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of video games. We got two toys a year. I always got a doll, and I either got a truck or a cap gun. Not a bunch of this or not a bunch of that. And Mama would sit out in our front yard and make a game out of who could see. Wasn't no seeing how many cars went by, because there wasn't no cars went by. It was how many birds you saw, and whoever saw and counted the most birds was the winner of the game. I don't have any funny memories of my daddy. It was all strict.
Was he very serious?
Pretty much. Pretty much you didn't get... If my little sisters, Rosie and Sandra and Glenda and all of them, if they got sick, Mama would write a note to Dr. Evans, and I would take the note to Dr. Evans and tell him, she would tell him what their symptoms were, what they needed, what she needed to give them, and he would give me a note to take to the drugstore, to give to the pharmacist, to give the medicine to me to take to my baby sisters and stuff. Sometimes when you had a baby at home, now they call them midwives. Then they just call them somebody to go help you have a baby. And Daddy would go out and get, most of the time it was my dad's aunt that came to help deliver the baby. We was always taken to my mama's. When we got out of bed and took to our mama's, we knew when we got back home there was going to be a new baby. And people didn't talk about being pregnant. We didn't know the word pregnant. And just so simple. And just...
How did you all acknowledge somebody being pregnant? Like asking them when your baby's due or anything like that?
You didn't. You didn't.
You didn't?
No, you didn't. Nobody asked nobody. Just it was just a secretive thing. And my greatest memory was like I said a while ago, I always got a doll, but I always got either a toy truck or a cat gun, one of the two. And my best memories of that was out behind our house was a bank, a clay bank, and I would build roads in that clay bank for my truck, and just stuff like that. If kids don't have we didn't have a TV until I was 14 years old, and people, the neighborhood, which the whole neighborhood was family, and we was lucky enough to have a radio. And at nighttime at 6 o'clock, the Lone Ranger and the Cisco Kid would come out, and the neighbor guys, which they was all cousins or uncles or whatever, they would come and sit in our front yard and listen to the Lone Ranger and the Cisco Kid on radio.